What's up, guys? I'm Nobody Special, and it was just a couple of days ago during my morning live stream where I got a super chat from one of my viewers who said, Jack, when are you going to have Tommy from Car Concierge Plus back on your channel? It's time to talk about the car market. And well, ask and ye shall receive. I'm so lucky today. I got my buddy Tommy is back with us from Car Concierge Plus. He is the man when it comes to the auto industry. Tommy, how you doing today, brother?
I am doing fantastic, man. Thanks for having me back. Thank you to your followers for requesting me back. And I've chatted with a bunch of your followers over the last few months since the last time we spoke, and I have a lot of happy Google reviews.
You know, this is now your third appearance on the channel. The first time you came on, it was about a year ago. And I have, by the way, I've gotten a lot of feedback from viewers about you, Tommy, 100% positive. So thank you for everything you've done for the channel viewers, for helping them buy cars. Guys, if you don't know, Tom is the CEO of Car Concierge Plus, which is an online car broker. He will act as your car buyer. You call him up, you tell him what you're looking for. He does all the search. Really, all you have to do is show up and test drive, tell him what you want. He negotiates, and then you sign, takes all the hassle out of car buying. And I'm going to put the link down there. Tommy has bought my last 3 or my last 4 cars. I can't even remember now. But I don't even think about buying my own cars. I go to Tommy every time. And since your first appearance, I know you have bought a lot of vehicles for my fellow Melonheads, and they have all given good feedback. So thank you for that.
No, thank you. Thanks again.
You know, my pleasure. And a year ago, you came on the channel the first time. It was actually almost to the day. I think we're like 8 days shy of the first birthday of that video. And it was pretty interesting because you told people, and I'm paraphrasing here, that if you can wait, you said there's never been a better time to hold off on buying a car and spend that energy to improve your credit score because of the high interest rates. That's really going to save you on your vehicle. And, well, you make your living convincing people to buy cars or selling cars, right? So that was very good advice in hindsight. And it was contrary to your financial interests to tell people to wait to buy a car. So I got to compliment you on that. You did right by people. That ended up being solid advice, as we're going to see in some of the data that we get into today about the car market. And I think that a lot of people wouldn't do that. A lot of people would just say, oh, there's never been a better time to buy what I'm selling. So I got to give you credit for that. Thank you. And then you came on the channel again in March. A couple months ago, we talked, and the market was just starting to turn more into a buyer's market in vehicles. We were finally starting to see new car prices come down a little bit, used car prices coming down a lot of bit. So tell me right now, like, what are you seeing in the car market? Give me like your high level stuff, and then we'll get into the specifics of other makes and models.
So we saw the glimmer of hope back in March, right? For most makes and models, the over MSRP ask/demand was subsiding for most people. I mean, even as we stand today, Jack, there are dealers that are still asking $3,000, $5,000, $7,000, $10,000 over sticker on some vehicles, and they're getting it, right? And I have people, how could they do that? All they can do is ask. They're not hacking into your bank account and stealing your family's money. The way I look at it, if they ask and you agree, then they deserve to take your $7,000 more than a car is worth. For the most part, I'm excited again because I'm really able to, I would use the phrase beat them up, but it is a mutually beneficial thing for everybody involved. I'm able to get serious discounts, not pre-COVID, but pretty similar on certain makes and models. So the discounts are there. The only caveat and asterisk is you need to put in the time and do the research more so than ever before, and you need to know where to look, right?
Now, real quick, Tom, you gave me a couple of statistics before we got going. Over the last 11 years, you've saved your clients a combined more than $10 million.
I track all the savings. We're at like 998. So just about $10 million in total savings. We're almost at 200 5-star Google reviews. I'm really proud of that. There's not a 4 or a 3 or a 2 or a 1. They are literally all 5 stars. We've had thousands of clients all over the country in every state, Hawaii and Alaska included. it's really been an amazing journey. I thought this was going to be a local little New Jersey tri-state area business, and people move, people have friends, people recommend good services, and we do a ton in, Florida and South Dakota and LA and everywhere in between for over the last 11 years now.
And I'm going to assume that of that nearly $10 million in savings, not much of that probably came in 2021 and 2022, did it? When cars were 20,000 above asking price in some cases.
It did, Jack, just in the wrong direction. And I'll tell you what that means. So in the middle of COVID, a Toyota Sienna minivan was $10,000 over sticker. That's what people were paying. Using my connections and my relationships over the last 10 years, I was able to get them for $5,000 over MSRP, right? It pains me, but I was still, for the few $100 people pay me, I was still able to net them $5,000 savings, just in the wrong direction. And I was completely transparent about that. So yeah, I count that towards the savings, but it doesn't feel good because my goal is to save as much money as possible under the manufactured, suggested retail price, not over. But the majority of the 10 million really took place in the first 8 years and the last, year and a half.
Now, one of the things that we saw during that oddity in the auto market of 21 and 22 was for a brief period of time there, a used car was a good investment. You could buy a used car and then 3 months later sell it back to the lot for $5 or $6 grand more than you paid for it. And I remember back in March when you came back on the channel for the second time, you pretty much told people, I hope you had fun because that's gone now. It's not coming back. Are you still?
Yeah, that's a thing of the past. And really, I mean, there were some clients, the biggest kind of monetization of that were people whose leases were up, where in the first time, pretty much in the last 10, 20, 30 years, some folks had north of $15,000 in lease equity when they turned their lease in. I had a guy that traded in his low mileage Jeep Wrangler because he didn't drive it during COVID. He handed his lease keys in and walked home with a check for $14,700. Just they incentivized him to not buy his lease out. And that was not, kind of rare exotic cars. My brother turned his Toyota Camry in, which was low mileage because he was working remotely, and walked home with a check for $3,000 on sort of a base Camry. So, but that is gone right now. There really is no lease equity in most makes and models anymore.
And we've actually seen in a lot of the cases, especially the people who bought some of those astronomically high sticker prices or above sticker prices, now we're starting to see the negative equity is coming back, and big time in some cases, right?
Big time. I mean, the car repos, Jack, are up. I mean, I think the latest stat was north of 20%, year over year. And it's really unfortunate because all of those folks that did pay, let's say, $10,000 over for a Kia Telluride or $7,000 over for a Hyundai Palisade, or most of those folks did not buy it in cash. In fact, none of my clients bought in cash. Therefore, they have a monster car payment. I mean, something you may think, a Kia Telluride, do the math with me, right? A Kia Telluride, let's figure a middle of the road one is 46. Typically tax, title, and registration, you're up to 50. Now tack on another 10 grand, you have a loan for $60,000 and you now go to sell it 3 years later and it's worth 32. You are upside down, even with your monthly payment, with a good chunk going to interest. I mean, I have clients that are north of 5, 10, 15, 20 grand upside down. One of the spouses or someone loses their job and that $1,150 a month car payment can't be made. So repossessions are through the roof.
So this is where my experience kind of falls short, and I almost can't even imagine this scenario because me and my car habits. I believe you put it mildly. You said frugal.
Yeah, you're thrifty.
Yeah, I'm a cheapskate. We can just say it. That's fine. But I pay cash for my cars. I don't finance. I always buy used. The concept of surrendering your vehicle, turning it in, and having to write a check for $20,000 when you do it. And this is after you've bought the car.
I'll give you an example, Jack. Let's use the wonderful Ford Lightning, right? For those of you who don't know what it is, it's the electric Ford F-150 pickup truck. The F-150 is the #1 selling vehicle for I don't know how many years. You can find the stat. Why would you mess with a gas engine? Nobody asked for a 700 horsepower, an electric Ford F-150 pickup truck. True story. I won't name names. A client here in New Jersey bought that EV, bought that Lightning pickup truck for $82,000 in year one.
Wow.
He's a business owner. He quickly, I mean, he follows the market. He follows, he's financially savvy. He went to go sell that 14 months later, and it was worth $36,000 of depreciation in 14 months, maybe 16 months than when he bought it. So he hired me. I was able to chat with a dealer that I knew pretty well, get that equity up a little bit. I netted him another $5 or $6 grand, but he still had to cut a check out of his family's bank account or his business bank account for $23,000, $24,000 to get rid of a car that he didn't want anymore. Had he not traded it in, he would have gotten even less from an individual or a private buyer.
Wow. So he pays 82 grand for the truck. He makes payments for 14 months. He sees the writing on the wall, and I'll give the guy credit for that because the depreciation is becoming. Yeah. And he gets out, but he's still got to write a check for 24 grand. And they wanted
$24,000. Yep.
Did you say they wanted 36 is what they wanted from him?
They wanted to originally offer 36. We got it up into the low 40s. He had put a bunch of money down. Whether it's a business expense or not, I have so many clients that are in this position now where, and I am not one of these business owners. I don't like hearing this. I don't like, oh, you should have hired me, or I rather give some good, solid, free advice like I did a year ago, right? Because it has come back to me tenfold, Jack, with your followers and other people where they said, you gave me solid advice. When I have some of your followers reach out to me, Jack, they've saved that initial video on YouTube or wherever they saw it. 10 months, they have it kind of tagged. And they've reached out to me months later because they weren't ready to buy, but they remembered that, hey, this guy wasn't really trying to hawk his business. He gave me some solid advice. Let me give it a whirl.
Yeah. And guys, while we're on the subject, let me just say this is not a sponsored video. Tommy's not paying me. There's no affiliate links. I'm not being compensated in any way for this video. Tom's just a stand-up guy, and I use his service happily every time, and I'm happy to recommend it to anybody. Unless you're like, if you're like a hardcore negotiator and you got your lifetime subscription to Car and Driver magazine and you love to do your own deals and stuff like that. If you're like hardcore like that, probably Tommy's service isn't for you. But pretty much everybody else, 999 out of 1,000 people, Tommy will save you money and hassle. And
yep.
I always feel like a mark.
Save time. It still amazes me, Jack, that people will just wake up on a Saturday and decide they're going to buy a new car that day with no research done, they'll be out shopping and they'll say, oh, there's an Acura dealership. Let me wander in, and they take a test drive and buy a car. I have clients that will do more research on a Florida vacation or a Yeti cooler or a Ninja air fryer than they will on a $40,000 vehicle. Like, that is not the time to get emotionally driven on a whim on a beautiful Saturday and just wander in, because all you're doing is leaving thousands of dollars of your family's hard-earned money in the dealership's hands as opposed to in your bank account. It's mind-boggling to me.
And you cracked me up on the Yeti cooler, because I've seen some people who swear by their Yeti coolers. Oh, they're so amazing. And I tell you,
I'm a Walmart Ozark Trail kind of guy.
Oh, okay. The thing I love about your service, Tommy, is if I don't have a car broker having my back, I can't help but feel like a mark when I walk onto a car dealership. Like I got a bullseye on my head. I know I'm the fish at that poker table, right? And I got predators in silk ties coming at me, trying to talk me into stuff I don't want and throwing all kinds of numbers at me. And then the final sign on the line number looks nothing like the number he initially gave you. I don't deal with any of that stuff. I say, talk to Tommy. Bye-bye. Talk to Tommy. I walk out. It's kind of fun to be able to say, oh, that's great. Go tell it to Tommy, and he'll tell you where to put it. So you mentioned the thing about the F-150. Sorry, I'm going all over the place here. Ford stock right now trading at $10.84. I know you're not a stocks guy, Tommy, but Ford stock is down about 20% over the last 4 days here because they said they're going to take a $5.5 billion hit from their EV business this year. And, you know, that anecdote about the F-150 Lightnings and how fast they're losing value. So if I'm putting myself into the position of a used car buyer right now, or I want an electric truck for whatever reason, right? You know, because I like to punch myself in the stomach. Sure, I'll buy an electric truck too. Why would I buy a new F-150 Lightning for what was the number you gave me? Like $82,000?
82, yeah, before the rebates. Yeah.
When a 1 year used is half that, less than half of that. And so how is Ford going to sell these big clunking electric vehicles? They're probably not going to, right? They've overproduced.
No, there's a fire sale on certain makes and models out there. The Ford F-150 Lightning being one of them. The Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe. Again, in Jeep's infinite wisdom, they decided that they needed a slightly electric plug-in Jeep Grand Cherokee that gets 18 miles on a charge, right? Fire sale on those. And then you just have other cars that, again, I don't mean to pick on Jeep, but the Jeep Gladiator, the Jeep pickup truck, you know, I have clients that love them, but there is such a surplus of them because they haven't sold well that I just got one the other day for $16,000 off sticker, not an EV, plain old Jeep V6, you know, gas engine. So if you're one of these folks that just wants a whopper, a whale of a deal, and you're not really too concerned on the make or the model or a pickup or a sedan, there are those crazy deals out there. You just have to, again, just do the research and know what you're looking for. And some people are very skilled with online car research. They know where to go and how to navigate. But for most consumers, they don't. And that's where a business like mine has really benefited people, both in terms of not wasting, you know, precious time on a weekend and most importantly, saving tons of cash.
That's good advice. And again, the research, and you're right that some people would do so much research for a cooler or an air fryer, but not a vehicle. And you can see like that's an extreme example, but the case of the F-150 Lightning, how you want to write a $30,000 check to be rid of the thing? Do your research up front, guys.
Do your, and who would have known, right? And that was kind of a who knew? I mean, again, you asked me, hey, how would a electric Ford F-150 do in the market? That's not an $80,000 gamble I'm willing to take, but just do your research. You know, we talk about EVs sometimes, Jack, you know, just it's kind of the wild, wild west still, right? There are certain makes and models that are doing really well. I'm never going to knock on EV. I think anything that's going to do better for the planet, right? Leave my 3 kids a better place. I'm all for it. Just make sure you do your research. If you commute 10 miles to work and you never want to have to use gas again, sure. Buy a $25,000 Nissan Leaf or an electric Hyundai Kona or something. But, you know, the other luxury EV automakers, the Mercedes, the EQs, and the Lincoln, you know, EVs, I mean, those are not moving. And there are, again, north of $20,000 savings. It's one of the best lease deals you can get right now is on a luxury EV.
Now, when leasing a vehicle, does the depreciation become a big worry? If you were to lease a vehicle like that, could you end up trapped when you surrender the lease? You have to write a big check, or
no? Because again, you think of it, you're borrowing it for 3 years.
Okay, so
you're literally borrowing it for 3 years. That monthly payment is what you owe the dealership, and after 3 years, you hand them back the keys or whatever, and you're done with it. So for somebody who wants to kind of dabble in the EV market, wants a luxury car, doesn't want the commitment of having them install, you know, multiple charging stations at multiple places or whatever, you just kind of, it's an okay scenario. But what they're saying is, and I read a lot about this, is that what's 260-mile range today on a charge in the next, we're going to have growth in technology more so in the next 3 or 4 years than in the last 20 years combined. So there will be the day with 600, 700, 800 miles on a charge in the foreseeable future. It's just I wouldn't gamble on that with my family's hard-earned money. Cars are not something for me to gamble on.
Yeah, there are advances in batteries, and like you said, one day we will have that big range. But as King Aragorn says, it is not this day. There may come a day when cars can go 600 miles on a charge. Now, you had some pretty interesting insights. I'm going to show on the screen here. Let's talk about price and supply for a minute. We're kind of blending two topics together. This is the most recent consumer price index that we just got for the month of June. New vehicle sales down 0.9% year over year. That's this number all the way on the right here. And then these are some of the month over month numbers. And used cars and trucks in particular, big drop there, 10.1% in the last year. And once again, I got to commend you for your advice that it was a good time to wait and improve your credit if you could afford to back then, because somebody in the used car market has been paid 10% on average to wait. Now, there's another kind of obscure data point, and then I'll let you give your overall commentary on the whole thing. This is total vehicle sales in the United States going all the way back to 2015. And the key takeaway from this chart is we used to sell between 16 and 18 vehicles a year in the U.S. pre-pandemic. Then, of course, the pandemic hits and the chart goes all over the place. We drop as low as 12 vehicles in a year in 2021, 12 million vehicles a year.
Yep.
And then the market somewhat recovered, but here we are, we've plateaued and we've even started to head lower again. And we're still only making around 15 and a half million. So it seems like there's this almost shortage building up in the market from underproduction. But at the same time, we're seeing some pretty radical price drops start in the used market, and new is a little slower to react. So give me your take on the direction of prices and some of the supply demand dynamics that you see playing out.
Yeah. So you mentioned used, right? So in my opinion, and based upon a lot of metrics, right, that the used car market and the supply is going to remain pretty thin for a bunch of years for certain makes and models, right? I think the stat was like during the pandemic, I think the automakers built something like 8 million fewer cars than they otherwise would have in a typical year, right? So that means that's 8 million less cars that will have never reached the pre-owned market. When I get about half of my business is pre-owned purchases versus new purchases. So when someone calls and says, I'm looking for I'll give you an example, a 2023 Acura MDX, right? It's got to have low miles. Once I did the research and showed them the delta between the savings on a 23 and the negotiated price on a brand new 24, it was a no-brainer. They went with the new 24 because for me, there's 4 brands that hold their equity better than anybody else, right? It's Honda, Acura, Lexus, Toyota. Historically, pandemic, financial swings, those 4 brands will hold their value all through COVID, pretty much everything else. There are certain cars out there, it just doesn't make sense to buy used, right? The point of buying used is to have a huge delta of depreciation. So in that example, for that Acura MDX, with the research that I did, and they were super grateful because they didn't know how or where to do it, they would have had to purchase a 2021 Acura MDX to really see that drop in savings over a brand new 24, because the savings between a 23 and a 24, it was only going to be about $2 or $3 grand, not to make light of $3,000. But if I tell most people it's either $3,000 for a used one or $3,000 more for a new one, most people are going to take the new one with a brand new warranty and not miles on the tires and the battery and everything else. So there are certain makes and models that really will dip right off the bat. A lot of luxury cars, BMW has depreciated a lot over the last 18 months. I mean, they're usually pretty steady compared to Mercedes and Audi, but BMW pre-owns have tanked. So again, if your dream, you work hard, you want a BMW 3 Series sedan, and you don't want to spend 60 grand brand new, then you can pick one up now for 37 and have your dream car at a heavily discounted 65% off fire sale.
Okay. Now, real quick, let's talk about financing for a quick moment here, because I also had another pretty interesting story here that I talked about on one of my live streams a few months ago. Ally Financial reporting $435 million in charge-offs when they reported their quarterly earnings. Ally Financial, one of the big banks that historically has lent a lot into the auto market. And a charge-off is basically, hey, these people borrowed money to buy a car and they're never paying us back. So
yeah,
we're taking a $435 million hit. That's up 9% year over year. Are you noticing financing is becoming harder to come by? Are the banks being more choosy?
they are. They are. Yeah, they're tightening up on lending big time. You know, interest rates. I mean, interest rates have stayed high, kind of in line with the real estate market, right? So I think right now with a good credit score, and when I say a good credit score, I mean, you know, let's call it 700, 720 plus. If you walked into a dealership tonight, the rate you're going to get anywhere is from 7.5 to 9.5%, right? That's on a regular used car. If you don't have a good credit score, I feel sorry for you, because I've seen them as high as 28%. I had a 36% interest rate. And we're not talking bankruptcies here. We're just talking
36% for a car loan, not a credit card. We're talking about a car loan.
For a car loan. It is the fact that that loan could even be pushed through is appalling. It makes me so upset to think that that person will be on that hamster wheel forever. I tried to convince that person, let's buy you a 20-year-old $10,000 Lexus that will last forever, rather than a newer car, a sexy car, whatever they wanted to own. And again, I have to draw the line sometimes, Jack. I'm not their financial advisor. I'm not their parents. I'm not their money person. I just give advice, and I like to think it's the right advice. In that scenario, buying a $10,000 heavily pre-owned Lexus cash and not having a loan versus spending $30,000 with a loan for 30% interest rate, it really pains me to see that person go through that. But
I mean, it's 36% on a car loan. It's time to consider roller skates to get to work at that point.
It's time to get an electric bike.
Yeah,
that's what it's time to get. But yeah, so and then, you know, the last thing I wanted to mention is that I have seen such brand loyal people on the new side jump ship in the last 2 years, more than I've ever seen in 11 years in business. I have my clients that for 30 years, you know, they're a Toyota family, right? Or they're a Volvo family, where that's all they want. So, but, you know, the interest rate plays a big part in that now, where let's say you've had 3 RAV4s and you go to buy a new RAV4, and now the interest rate on a new one is 7%, as opposed to, you know, a Hyundai Tucson is 0.9. That's a big consideration and a huge financial savings. So I have a lot of people, Honda CRV loyalists, Toyota RAV4 loyalists, that they're considering, you know, Hyundai Tucsons and Mazda CX-5s, and they're great SUVs at a much lower interest rate. So they're kind of jumping ship on brands.
Yeah, you're talking a few hundred a month, and your payment difference, right?
And over the course of a 5 or 6 month loan, you're talking thousands in interest.
Yeah, so it really pays. Now, I'd like to wrap up every interview I do with you with some of your famous car buying tips, because you're always nice. There's always people who are like, no, I can still do my own negotiations. I don't need Tommy anyway, which, hey, all right. You know, everybody do you. So what do you got for us? Give us a couple of your secret car buying tips.
Right. I'm gonna give you four really good ones, and a lot of your followers have referenced these too. So even if you decide not to use me, I'm going to give you 4 tips. Hopefully you can work these into your deals, or use this to your advantage. Number 1, never disclose that you're planning on paying cash up front. This is a complete negotiation deterrent. Keep in mind, God love them, I'm of Italian heritage, so I say this with love. My family thinks cash is king, right? Oh, I'll just pay cash. I'll get a much better discount. It doesn't work that way anymore. Mm-hmm. You walking in and paying cash is actually a deterrent, because that dealership does not get the kickback from the loan from the bank that they process your loan through. So cash is not king. And even more so, because the margins on new cars and used cars are so slim right now, there are many dealers that will actually charge you an addendum for paying cash. So there, you'll sometimes see, like at a gas station, cash or credit, you will see, here's the price paying cash, and it's usually $1,000 more. Here's the price if you finance through us. What I recommend to people, write this down, is that most loans, let's say there was $1,000 savings, take the loan, let it mature 60 days and pay it off in full. You'll pay an extra 60 or 70 bucks in interest versus the $1,000 you would have had to pay more.
That's actually the only 3 car payments I've ever made in my life, Tom, was one of the cars that you bought for me.
I remember that.
And I wanted to pay cash, and I'm allergic to car payments. I didn't want to have a car payment. I didn't want to pay interest. I didn't want to carry the extra insurance that was necessary. I made 3 car payments in my entire life at Tommy's behest because you got me a better price on the car in exchange for those 3 payments. So it ended up being worth it.
Sometimes that's the last negotiation, kind of thing you need to pull out of your pocket. But so number 1, never tell them you're paying cash up front. Number 2, we've kind of talked about this. I made my Yeti cooler and air fryer joke, is that the time you spend on the research of a car before you buy it is more important than in the last 10 years, right? There are so many changing factors in terms of, especially on a lease, in terms of the interest rate and the residual value. And you need to take the time to do the research, right? It sounds very simple. I implore people, whether you use me, don't use me, if you're doing this for a friend or an elderly parent, or take the time, spend a few hours, dedicate some time after the kids go to bed at night, wherever you can find that time, dedicate the time, do the research. It will save you money. That's number 2. Number 3, this is a little controversial sometimes, is expand your geography. Everyone wants to go to the car dealership down the street from them because I've known Phil for 18 years. That's where I want to drive, right? You are limiting yourself so much. That's saying, I use the analogy, I'm only going to meet my future spouse in the town that I live in, right? I don't want to travel outside of a 4-mile, 10-mile radius to meet someone to fall in love with. That would be an absurd statement. So why would you assume that you're going to get the best price from the dealership that's down the street from them?
There's a lot of guys right now watching this video looking next to them saying, except for you, honey, you're great.
There are a lot of people expanding their Match.com profile geography radius right now. But that is, I'll use a perfect example, is that if you have the stomach for it, and if you don't mind a bit of a road trip, and I'm not talking about driving cross country. We had a friend from college, Jack, that called me up a few months ago. He lives in New Jersey, was looking for a Honda Pilot. He said, I would ideally like to stay close to home. And I said, what does not staying close to home, what is that worth it to you? And I'm very mindful of people's time. I'm not going to send you 2 hours away to save $200. He actually wound up netting another $1,800 to drive from New Jersey to Maryland for the same car. He took a one-way Uber, not to upset his spouse. The Uber cost him $140. He saved $1,800. He was flush $1,600 plus in savings. So tip number 3, expand your geography. Use everything at your disposal in terms of the internet to look beyond just kind of the dealership down the street from you.
Can I throw one addendum on that with the expanded geography? Because I also did that. The last truck that you bought for me, Tommy, that's what we did. And I was happy to do it. Beware the sunk cost fallacy. If you do that, be prepared to walk away still at the last minute. You never know, they're going to slip something in there. Don't get stuck in that mentality. Well, I drove 2 hours to get here. If I leave without a car, I failed and I've lost all that time. That's a sunk cost. Just deal with it. Have the discipline to walk away if the deal goes south. That's the one time the expanded geography could act against you, is it might make you more willing to make less of a deal if you end up dealing with a shady dealership, which wasn't the case with the truck that I ended up buying, or in the case of Rick's Pilot. Sorry to interrupt you, Tommy. Go ahead. You got one more for us?
Good. Listen, good point. And then the 4th and final one, and this is, this is kind of my Jerry Maguire mantra. If you take nothing else from this video, is that do not go into a new or used car purchase with the mindset of, this is how much I can afford, right? And that's going to, a lot of people are going to, they may be turned off, but let me explain. Of course, it's how much you can afford, right? Some people don't think in terms of total cost of ownership with insurance and brakes and gas, and they'll think of, here's my budget. Here's my list of items for the month. I know I have $380 for a car payment. That's how much I can afford on a car per month. What are you out of your mind, Tom? I'm asking you to slightly change your mindset of how much this vehicle is worth and how much it's going to cost you over a lifetime. Yes, maybe that $380 a month is what you can afford right now, but maybe you rejigger it and you get a car with an added safety feature, and that lower insurance policy rate now offsets your car payment. So you have to think of, okay, I'm getting a hybrid sedan that gets 45 miles a gallon instead of my pickup truck, which gets 16. You're now $180 a month more in gas savings. So don't think of it as very narrow-minded. Here's how much I can afford. This is the number. It's on my spreadsheet. Think of it as this is the total ownership of what this car is going to cost me over the next 2 years, 15 years, however long you keep your cars. If you change your mindset and think of a car as a total cost of ownership rather than a singular monthly payment on some Excel spreadsheet, it will lead you to make better buying decisions.
Fantastic advice, especially the little bit about how like the added safety feature can save you money on insurance on the back end. And it might be worth paying up a little bit more for that because in the long run, it's going to pay you back. I think the average car shopper probably never goes there mentally. And that's why it really pays to deal with a guy like Tommy. And Tom, thank you so much for sharing your information and your expertise. And I love this boots on the ground level information because, sitting here in my office, I consume the data points on total sales and CPI prints. But to see, okay, does it line up with what the dealerships are actually showing? It's good to actually touch grass and to test that information. And once again, folks, I highly recommend Tom's service. I've used it several times and I intend to keep doing it. This is CarConciergePlus.com. I'm going to put links down in the description. Tommy, tell us a little bit. How does the typical experience, if I'm new and I want to use your service, what's it going to look like? How is it going to play out?
So you can either fill out the form on the website. You can call me on my cell, which is also on the website. We have a quick initial chat on the phone. I take some copious notes. You give me the current situation, right? I have a 20-year-old car. I'm looking to trade in or sell. Half of my clients know exactly what they're looking for, down to the color, the trim level, the stitching. And the other half say, I haven't bought a car in 10 years. I want a mid-size SUV that's decent in the snow, that has a good crash rating. What do you recommend? And I will give you my unbiased recommendations. If you haven't test driven the cars, that's part of our service as well. We set up the test drives for you. Your goal as the buyer is to narrow it down to the one make and model you want. So let's just say, Jack, you're looking, okay, I want a Toyota Tacoma. It's got to be gunmetal gray. It has to have a backup camera, whatever. We then shop it around to 5 or 6 car dealerships until we know we have the lowest price. We send that in writing, sign our name next to it. This is where we really differentiate ourselves. At any point, if you don't think that's the lowest price and you think you can go out and try to beat it and you do, we will give you your money back. And that is in writing. It's not a marketing ploy. A stat that I'm really proud of: in 11 years, I have had 9 people beat our pricing.
Wow.
And I keep track of those people. Really, 4 did it in a very shady, kind of unscrupulous way where they took my deal and went to go beat it by $4. And I, of course, gave their money back because I don't want to do business with people like that. So technically, in my mind, it's really 5 people have ever beaten the price that I brought them in 11 years.
Wow.
And it ranges that, the pricing is anywhere from $575 for used up to like $725 for brand new. And that is based upon if you want to do test drives and multiple negotiations and things like that.
And I tell you, my favorite part about using your service, Tom, is when I go to the dealership and the guy starts asking me questions and he asks me if I want a cup of coffee and he has me sitting there for hours so I sink more costs. Every question he asks me, I just say, talk to Tommy. I'm like that guy at the poker game who covers his face with the sunglasses on. I give nothing, you get nothing. Talk to Tommy, no matter what your question is.
I wish all my clients listened as well as you do, yep. Jack, because that is why I'm here, right? The other thing is the entire time our clients are at the dealership purchasing, we're on call via our cells. So you could call, hey, they're trying to flub this number, or hey, last minute, I'm interested in tire and wheel insurance. This is something you can negotiate, and we always do.
Yeah. And the other thing that I liked, especially the last time I bought a truck from you, is after you had already settled on the price and I was ready to drive back to the dealership. And I remember you told me, you said, hey, don't go home, stay in the area, because I had traveled like an hour and a half to go get it. And you said, I think I can get you this thing tonight and save you the round trip, because you found some obscure data point that they were about to send this truck to an auction. So you knew the bottom dollar price they were going to accept because they had already sent it to the auction at that reserve. And you gave me this briefing before I went in. You say, here's what's going to happen. You're going to go in there. They're going to offer you this. Here's the pros. Here's the cons. Here's what I do in your situation. They're going to offer you this. This is a waste of money. They're going to offer you this, you know. So I kind of knew everything they were going to throw at me, and all I just went in, yes, no, signed, done. I mean, it was.
Yep. And that's so not easy. I just want to make clear, Jed, that's not because we know each other. We do that for every single client in writing. So we send a little checklist before you go in. Like you said, they're going to offer you gap insurance. We would skip it. Tire and wheel insurance. We would skip it. An extended warranty on a luxury car. Maybe we'll consider it. Leather protection, rust protect, all that nonsense they try to slip it. We provide that checklist ahead of time with our recommendation of whether maybe consider it or vehemently oppose it.
Fantastic. And again, worth every penny, Tommy. You've saved me a lot of money, and you've saved me so much headache, and just a peace of mind knowing I'm not being ripped off is really an incredible value that provides. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that with my fellow Melonheads, as well as your time today. And everybody, once again, that's Tom Palella from Car Concierge Plus. Link in the description. Highly recommend that. Thanks again, Tommy. And everybody else, until next time, live small and dream big.